In today's video, I'll be showing you 7 ways to reharmonize a melody. Enjoy! How's it going? I'm Dave and my channel is all about helping you create awesome neo-soul and R&B sounds on your guitar. So if you're new here and that sounds like your kind of thing, make sure you click that subscribe button and you hit the notification bell so that you're notified every single time I release a new video. So today's video topic is reharmonization. I've got 7 increasingly complex techniques for you. So this is going to be a really good one. And if you want to download some resources for the video, they're down in the description at my Patreon page. So let's get started. What is reharmonization? So reharmonization is quite a simple concept. It's basically when we take an existing melody and we change the chords that are accompanying it. That's it basically. Now there's some really awesome, crazy, wacky sounds you can get from reharmonization, but there's one thing you really need to remember, and that is that the melody is the most important thing. So you always have to pay attention to the melody, keep the melody at the forefront of the music. And just because you know how to use a complex technique or play some complex chords over the top of that melody doesn't mean it's going to make it better. Sometimes simple is better, sometimes more advanced is better. You've just got to use your ears and work out what sounds best. So today we'll be using the first line of the popular song Amazing Grace. Over Amazing Grace, over that first line, we're playing a C, F, C, and G chord progression. So in the key of C, we're playing a 1-4-1-5. And it's a G7, not a G. Take a listen, and then we'll jump into the first technique. So the first technique is to take advantage of the chord functions. In any key that you're playing in, each chord will have its own function. Now let's take the key of C, for example. We've got the chords C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, and B diminished. And these chords fit into one of 3 categories, okay? First of all, we've got the tonic chords. Tonic chords sound at home, they sound stable, they sound nice to start and finish on. We've got chords 1, 3, and 6 in whatever key you're playing in. In this case, it's C, E minor, and A minor. Then we've got the subdominant chords. These subdominant chords take you on a bit of a journey. They take you away from that home base, that stable position, and add a little bit of flavor to the chord progression. So chords 2 and 4 in whatever key you're playing in are the subdominant chords. In this key, in the key of C, we're playing D minor and F. And then we've got the dominant chords, which are chords 5 and 7. Dominant chords are all about creating tension and really raising the tension before releasing it back on a tonic chord. Now in any key that you play in, it's going to be chords 5 and 7. And in the case of C major, that's G and B diminished. So how do we reharmonize with the chord functions? It's pretty simple. We take whatever chord exists already in the chord progression and replace it with another chord that has the same function. So let's take the chord progression C, F, C, G for Amazing Grace and replace some of the chords. So C is the starting chord. C is a tonic chord. It's chord 1. So we can replace it with 3 or 6, E minor or A minor. I'm going to replace it with A minor. Then the next chord is F. That's a subdominant chord, chord 4. The other subdominant chord is D minor, chord 2. So I'm going to replace F for D minor. And then we go back to C. But I'm going to replace C with another tonic chord, which I could do E minor or A minor. I'm going to do E minor this time. But I'm going to also play A minor straight afterwards, okay? In the same space that we would play that C. Then after that C, or in this case now, E minor then A minor, we would play a G7. This is a dominant chord, and the other dominant chord is chord 7, which is B diminished. So B diminished is the chord we're going to use instead of G7. So altogether we've got A minor, D minor, E minor, A minor again, and then B diminished. Now I typically don't go for the B diminished or the diminished chord in my key. I usually stick with chord 5 as it usually has a stronger pull and more tension leading back into your tonic chord. But for the purpose of this, to demonstrate how the technique works, I'll be using a B diminished chord. So take a listen. So that was the first method of reharmonization. Let's take a look at the second method, and that is secondary dominants. Now, secondary dominants are really awesome. I use them all the time, and they're a fairly simple technique. So as I said, chord 5, G7 in the key of C, has that pull back to chord 1. So we can use the 5 to 1 cadence to our advantage here and use it in different places in the chord progression. So for example, if our target chord, and our target chord just means the next chord in our chord progression, is F, we're headed to F. What we could do before that F is play a dominant 7th chord, a 5th above F, which is C. So we could play a C7, hear that tension that wants to be resolved on F, okay? So I've added this in a couple of times in the chord progression. So we've got our C at the start. The next chord is F, so I play a C7 before playing F. We're going back to C again. And then the next chord in the chord progression is G. So you want to play a dominant 7th chord, a 5th above G, which would be D. Now, remember I said the melody is the most important thing here. So I played a D9 instead of a D7 because this note here, this D at the top of the chord, clashes with the E in the melody, okay? So I decided to put E at the top of the chord instead and make a D9 so it'd sound a bit more pleasant with the melody, okay? And that leads very nicely into our G7 because it's a 5 to 1 relationship there. Now, something you could also do is play altered dominant chords as your secondary dominant chords. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but they're just a really jazzy way of playing dominant chords. All you do is you take the 9th and you flatten it or you sharpen it, or you could take the 5th and you can flatten it and sharpen it, and it just adds a lot more tension to the dominant chord. Now, I've done a video all on altered dominant chords, which you can check out here, learn a bit more about them if you want to use them. For now, we're just going to use dominant 7, dominant 9 chords. So we're playing C, C7, F, C, D9, and then G7. So take a listen to that. Okay, so method 3 is the 2-5. Now, the 2-5 is just a bit of an extension of the secondary dominant. For example, if we are playing an F again, okay, our secondary dominant or our 5 of F would be C7. Now, before the 5, we could add a 2. So the 2 of F is just the chord a tone up. And in this case, it would be G. And we play a G minor. I'm playing a G minor 7 here. Good, and then we can play the C7 and then the F, okay? So if we play C to F, sounds nice, but if we add the 2-5, it sounds way more soulful. Really, really nice. Now that's what you would do to a major chord. You'd play a minor 2 and then a dominant 7 as the 5. But if we're headed to a minor chord, you'd play a different chord as your 2. So if we headed to C minor now, the 2 would actually be a half diminished chord. Okay, so we'd play D half diminished. Then the 5 is G, so we just stick to a G7 still, and then C minor, okay? So just be aware of that when you're headed to a minor chord, the 2 chord is a half diminished chord. And when you're headed to a major chord, the 2 chord is just a minor chord or a minor 7 chord if you want to spice things up a little bit. So in the chord progression for Amazing Grace, what I've done is I've played C, I used the secondary dominant again, C7 leading to F, back to C again, but then leading into G7, I played a 2-5. So G is a major chord, so the 2 of G is A minor, played an A minor 7, and then I played that D9 again as the 5, leading us back into G. Okay, so So take a listen to me using that over the melody. Method 4 is the tritone substitution. Now, I really love tritone substitutions. They're probably the easiest method here to execute, even though the theory behind them is a bit more complex. Even if you don't know the theory, it's still one of the easiest things to do. So all you have to do, here's the hack, you're going to play a dominant 7th chord, 1 fret above your target chord. Okay, so that's it. So if we're headed to F, you're playing F sharp 7 just before the F. Okay, so for example, C to F, C, F. But now I could add the tritone substitution and play F sharp 7 to F. Okay, now why is this called a tritone substitution? Now I'm not going to go into full detail, but basically this F sharp 7 is a tritone away from C7, which would be the usual secondary dominant chord leading into F. Okay, so whenever you've got a secondary dominant chord, you could also experiment with playing the dominant 7th chord a tritone away, in this case F sharp 7, and that's usually just a semitone higher or a fret higher than your target chord. Okay, now in the chord progression for Amazing Grace, I played C, then leading into F I used a secondary dominant, but I played an altered dominant chord. I played an F sharp 7 sharp 5. Okay, sounds really nice. Then we head back to C. Then I play another tritone substitution before G, or G7. Okay, and that is going to be G sharp 7 sharp 5. All right, it's as simple as that. Take a listen to the tritone substitutions in action. All right, technique number 5. This is where things start getting a little bit more interesting. This is common tone harmony. Now, again, it's a very simple concept, but it does take some experimentation. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You really do have to use your ears for this technique. Taking a note in the melody, and all you're going to do is play a chord that contains that note. So if I'm playing a C here, obviously the chord C works, but what else works? What else has a C? So an A minor has a C. Okay, we can think of something a bit more interesting. Maybe an F sharp major 7 sharp 11. That has a C as well. That sounds really interesting. Okay, now notice that every chord I'm playing here uses C as the note at the top of the chord. That's quite important, okay? When you're reharmonizing, try and keep that melody note at the top of the chord. It's not a necessity, but it makes things a lot easier. So let me just show you what I did to the melody for Amazing Grace. So we started off on a C note, just playing a C chord, okay? Then the melody moves to E. Okay, now over this E, I'll play an E augmented chord. And that E is at the top of the chord. Then the melody goes back to C and I'm playing an A minor or an A minor 7, I think. Okay, because that C is at the top of the chord there. Then the melody moves to G. Now I play a G7 sus4, I think this chord is. Now this chord just came from a bit of experimentation on the fretboard. It wasn't a shape that I was particularly thinking of. Okay, and G in the melody is not actually at the top of the chord. I'm playing a C at the top of the chord, but G is also in the chord twice, okay? So it still works. Then the melody moves back to C. So I played this chord here. This is an A sharp or a B flat sus2 chord, and we've got a C at the top of the chord, the note in the melody. Then the melody goes back to E again. So I play a G sharp 7 sharp 5 chord. Okay, so that G sharp 7 sharp 5 has the E at the top of the chord. Okay, now these chords came about just from experimentation and using chord shapes that I already know, putting my fingers in different places, trying to experiment with different sounds. And you just got to really just use your ear and experiment. There's no real way to do this right, so get experimenting. And then finally the melody finishes on a G. So I decided to use a C sharp major 7 sharp 11 chord, because it has that G at the top of the chord. And the major 7 sharp 11 chord is a really, really nice chord to kind of use for your reharmonizations. It works really well. All right, so take a listen. Now we're going to simplify things a little bit for method number 6, the very, very quick technique that I forgot to mention, and that is harmonic rhythm. So we're not really focusing on what chords we're playing, but more when we're playing the chords, okay? So it's as simple as that. We're just changing when we play the chords to give the song a different feel. I don't really need to go any further, it's quite self-explanatory, but I did come up with an example using a different rhythm in the chords. So take a listen to that, completely changes the feel. Now, method 7 is a chromatic descending bass line, okay? So what we're doing is we're taking any note, so I'm starting on C, just because it's easy, yeah? And then every subsequent chord that we play in the chord progression is gonna have the bass note descend by a semitone each time. All right, now this works similarly to the common tone harmony, where you've got to play a chord that has the melody note at the top, but we've also got to keep this bass note descending, all right? So it's just a little bit more tricky to get something that sounds like it works in the song. So I use the C to start off with, then the next bass note is B, so I play the B sus4, okay? Then the next bass note would have to be A sharp, so I played an A sharp sus2, okay? Always paying attention to the melody and keeping the melody note at the top, okay? Then A, I played an A minor 7. The next bass note down is G sharp, so I played a G sharp 7. We had this C in the melody, okay? Then the next bass note, G, played a G13. Okay, next bass note, F sharp. And this is the one I ended on, and it's a really weird chord. Okay, so an F sharp 7. It's got sharp 5, and it's got a flat 9 as well. Okay, very interesting altered chord there. So take a listen to the melody with this descending chromatic bass line. And finally, I've come up with a nice little example where I mix most of the techniques, I think at least 5 of these techniques together to create something that sounds pretty interesting. So I'm starting with an A minor. That's me using the chord functions. So technique number 1. Then I'm playing a G minor 7 to F sharp 7 sharp 5. And into the F. Okay, so this is sort of a mixture between the chromatic descending bass line and a 2-5, because I'm playing the 2, and then I'm playing the tritone substitution of the 5. Okay, so it's kind of like a hybrid of 2 techniques there. Then we go to C, then I play a G sharp 7. Okay, that's a common tone harmony there. So we've got the C in the melody, okay? We're playing a G sharp 7. And then we're playing a 2-5, A minor 7, D9 into our G7 sharp 5. Which is also a common tone harmony there. So take a listen to the chord progression that I've put over this melody, and you'll see how all these techniques can be blended together. There you have it. 7 ways to reharmonize a melody. I hope you found it useful. I hope you've learned some new techniques that you can apply either to other people's songs or your own songs. If you have any other interesting reharmonization techniques, let me know in the comments, as I would love to hear them. If you enjoyed the video, click like, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. I've also written a book all on chord progressions, so if you're looking to improve your chord progressions, I'm offering the first 2 chapters of my book for free. Those first 2 chapters are going to show you how to write a basic chord progression using those chord functions that I talked about, so the tonic, subdominant, dominant chords. And then it's going to show you how to extend those chords with 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th to create awesome, jazzy, soulful sounds that are perfect for R&B, neo-soul, that kind of thing. So that's free. Make sure you head to the description and grab those first 2 chapters. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely like this video here, so make sure you check that out as well, and I'll see you there. Have a good one.